genre.
Welcome to The Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who, The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review, discuss, and recap every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Nick Jimenez.
I'm Scott Corelli.
And I'm Cassandra Fredrickson.
Today we'll be discussing the Twin Dilemma, which is the Sixth Doctor, played by the very pleasant and very beloved Colin Baker's very first story.
Yeah, although neither of those descriptors are usually true.
I can imagine.
So before we get into part one, first of all, The Twin Dilemma, written by Anthony Stephen, directed by Peter Moffat. This is the season finale of season 21.
Interesting. I read it after the fact. I'm like, what an interesting finale.
Yeah. For some reason, they decided to have the regeneration story happen as the penultimate episode and have the first story of the Sixth Doctor as the finale.
So give me the backstage drama, Scott. What was the situation in between Peter Davison and Colin Baker?
Well, basically, Peter Davison, after doing the Five Doctors special, talked to Patrick Troughton, and Patrick Troughton was like, hey, buddy, look, I know you like this, but 3 years and then get the hell out of there because you don't want to do this for longer than 3 years. That's crazy. Notice who's missing here today? Yeah, the guy who did it for longer than 3 years. Don't do it longer than 3 years. So Davison decided that his third season was going to be his last, and then left. And John Nathan Turner and Colin Baker had mutual friends, and so Colin Baker and John Nathan Turner were at a party together. And John Nathan Turner was like, he was very smitten with Colin Baker and was like, let's get this guy to play the Doctor. And Colin Baker kept it to himself that he had actually just been in the show because he was like a soldier guy in like a season ago or a season and a half ago.
And the grand tradition of the BBC only having 5 actors at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he came on, and their plan with Colin Baker to do something different with him was that they were going to make him very unlikable and very alien. And then over the course of his tenure as the Doctor, allow him to grow as a character. And then just when you actually start loving the guy, then that's when he would regenerate. That was the plan. It did not go over well. So the plan was abandoned completely. So that's why he's the way he is in this story. And, God bless Colin Baker. He went with it. He's the first Doctor to be a fan of Doctor Who playing the Doctor. He had said like multiple times in interviews among like when he was announced that he wanted to be the longest running Doctor ever. He wanted to beat Tom Baker's record because he loves the show and he loves the character, and he couldn't ever imagine himself not want to do this. That didn't work out so well for him, unfortunately. And but we'll get through that over time, but you can see the seeds of it being planted. They made decisions with his character in this story that has affected him forever. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. This story, when Doctor Who fans make their top 200 stories or whatever, invariably the twin dilemma and the next story we're going to cover, Time in the Rani, those two tend to be neck and neck for bottom of the list. Like
What?
very like dead bottom.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, like the very worst stories that this show has ever done. But I'll be honest, watching Twin Dilemma this time, it's not a great story, but worst story ever, I think is a bit of a stretch. And I think that the reason people think that is just because of their distaste for Colin Baker as the Doctor, which is really unfortunate. Because as we'll get to, once we get through his television appearances, as we'll get to in his audio stuff, Colin Baker is a phenomenal Doctor.
Yes.
But he just didn't get to do what he wanted to do with the character in the television show, unfortunately. But yeah, Twin Dilemma, one of the worst episodes according to most Doctor Who fans, classic Who fans, I guess. I don't know. We'll talk about it because I really don't think this story is that bad. I don't think it's that good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's that good, but I don't think it's that bad. Not as bad as a lot of others. There's some Tom Baker ones that are way worse than this.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. I really think people get distracted by how much they don't like Colin Baker in the role, and how like weird and angry and off-putting he is in this story. And I think that paints an unfortunate picture for the story, which I don't think is that bad. Plus, it comes on the heels of The Caves of Androzani, which is the best classic Who story of all time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like a 1-2 punch of just like, it's Whiplash is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I wish.
Yeah, right. Not the movie, because that would be great. But it's actual Whiplash, which is terrible.
Although Miles
all right,
Teller would also be a really unpleasant, unlikable Doctor.
He probably would be, yes. So let's talk about the Twin Dilemma, and let's start with part 1, which begins with twins, ginger twins. They look like the twins in this, who are named Romulus and Remus for reasons. They look like a crossbreed between the Weasley twins and the creepy little girl twins from The Shining.
I was going to say they look like two like adolescent versions of David from AI, artificial intelligence.
A little bit that too, yeah.
But
I threw a little bit of that in there too.
But like with the like speech pattern of, do you guys remember the Mike Myers SNL character Simon?
No.
Well, you know, my name is Simon, and I love to do drawings. He was like this little British kid that was just in the bathtub, and he would just be drawing stuff on crayons, and he was like a cheeky little like Cockney boy, but it was Mike Myers, and that's what these guys reminded me of. I just want to say this up front. This was the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. All 4 parts of these.
Oh, okay. Let's hold on. Let's not start talking about it until we are actually talking about it.
I know. I was just really surprised to hear that this is known as one of the worst episodes of the show ever.
Yeah. Not just one of. I mean, it's like literally by most people is considered the worst episode of the show.
Yeah, like to say that, for people to say that this is like the stranger in a strange land of Doctor Who flabbergasts me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I do think it's weird that but I find that a lot of the stories, next week's episode notwithstanding, a lot of the stories that are considered really terrible, I don't tend to really agree with. I said, next week's episode notwithstanding.
Yeah.
See, because if someone of the 6 adventures we've been on so far, like if you told me like, hey, which one do you want to watch right now? I would either say Robot or Twin Dilemma. Like Castro Valva, like no, thank you. But like this was just a miracle after miracle.
All right. Well, So we open on the twins, and they're playing like TP chess or something. I don't know what it is. And they're just like moving these little triangle.
And to paint a picture, these are already from the bucket, like from the first buzzer. These are deeply unsettling children.
Yes, very deep.
They are too old to be acting the way that they are. But they're still children. It was nuts.
Mm-hmm. And so they said they're playing this TP chess, and their dad comes in, and the dad's just like, well, they go to their dad. They're like, we're bored. So instead of playing this game, we're going to do maths. And he's like, oh no, you can't do maths. When you do maths, bad stuff happens. You can't do maths.
They're like, don't do maths. Like mother.
This is the worst. Please don't do this. Don't do this. And they're like, you know what, Dad? We're going to do what we want. And he's like, I can't stop you. You're creepy twins.
Precog looking like.
So he heads off to work. And then we go back to the doctor, who is newly regenerated into Colin Baker.
Much to no one's delight.
Yeah, and he's walking around very smug because he's very into his new body.
Yeah, sort of the in a departure for every doctor that I've seen so far. You know, he's very proud of his, which is weird because Peter Davidson was like a Disney prince.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh,
well,
fine.
and he talks about his distaste for his previous. His previous persona. So
so not only is he praising his looks, but he's like shitting on the last Doctor's like appearance.
Right. Yeah. And so he's walking around real smug, and Peri's just like, no, you're actually really ugly and kind of fat, and it makes me uncomfortable. And he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, oh, I mean, look, I don't want to do this, but here's a mirror. And then he's looking at the mirror. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think I look fantastic. And she's just like, Jesus Christ. And then he struts off. I love the beat too, where he's looking at himself in the mirror. And then he turns the mirror toward Peri to say, I mean, will you look at this? And it's like, that's not how mirrors work.
Right.
And so he struts off toward the costume room, and he walks into the costume room and then just starts freaking out. And then we realize, like, oh, okay, so this isn't going to be as great of regeneration as we thought it was going to be. Not so smooth, as it turns out. So he starts freaking out, speaking gibberish, and falling over. And then we go back to the twins, and now they're sitting in their math chairs, and they're doing math back to back.
Like bros do with bros.
Exactly. And on the boards, on their little monitors, they're making what looks like shapes from Space Invaders. But for some reason, this is math of some kind. Space math, we'll call it. So they're doing space math, and that's all that's happening. Like we literally cut to them doing space math, and then we cut out, and the doctor's totes fine again, and is picking out a coat.
You get the feeling just from the few minutes that we've known the twins that like they're probably they maybe have like the Antichrist inside of them, like
possible. Or they each have one half of the Antichrist.
They're both Horcruxes for the Antichrist.
So the doctor's totes fine again. He's picking out a coat, and he picks up a furry one, and Peri laughs at that one, and he's just like, no, just kidding. I would never wear this. And then he puts on a velvet one that's kind of third doctory. And then he's into it for a second, and then not into it, and then he finds the coat that he wants. And then we cut back to the twins again in their math chairs, and then out of nowhere, some old guy named Edgeworth teleports in.
And we mean out of nowhere. I
mean literally out of nowhere. And
it scared me when he first spoke, because I was like, whoa, there wasn't even like an edit. What the?
Yeah. So Edgeworth is in there, and he's just like, oh man, you guys, wow, so good at math. Like, I mean, I know math, but This is beyond me. This is such good math. You guys. Yeah, you guys, math. Such good at math. And then they're like, you're not, I don't know who you are, and you're probably not supposed to be here. And he's like, oh, you know what? You're totally right. Nice meeting you, Remus. Shakes his hand. Nice meeting you, Romulus. Shakes his hand. And he places these little circles on their wrists. And suddenly they're like, they like lose their memory. They're like selective amnesia bracelets or something.
That's
because,
as
you know, everyone stores their memories in wrists.
So this old man essentially breaks into these little boys' rooms and drugs them so they can give selective amnesia, and then takes them away to his space building.
Yeah, it's a little dark. So he takes them away. They all three of them teleport away. And then the Doctor is dressed up in his outfit, and he adds the little cat brooch that you got to have, the little kitty cat brooch. And Peri is not remotely impressed with the Doctor's outfit, but the Doctor is like, whatever, I'm ahead of my time. Just deal with it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, wait till you see his shoes.
Yeah, he's really into his outfit. And honestly, let's talk about the Doctor's outfit, because there's a thing. Okay, so one of the things that they wanted to do with the Sixth Doctor, what John Nathan Turner wanted to do specifically, with
F him up.
Doctor. Well, no, he wanted to make him an alien. And so, you know, we get the line in the 4th episode. We'll talk about that later. But that was really supposed to set up the whole theme of the Sixth Doctor, which is he was going to be more alien than any other Doctor. And so his thought was, well, if he's alien, he wouldn't know what looks good. And after the 5th Doctor just being the classiest of all Doctors, I mean, until the 8th Doctor, of course, who is the classiest of all Doctors.
Hello.
Yeah, well, the 5th Doctor, you know, he was wearing like a nice outfit, an outfit that no one would be embarrassed of wearing, you know. The only exception being perhaps the question marks on the collars.
Sort of 10 style.
Yeah, but like, yeah, he's got a very, you know, low key outfit. And so to make him alien, he's like, just design me the ugliest thing you can imagine. And this is what the costume designer came up with. However, I will say, one, I think for the most part it works, because there's something that I like about the Doctor's outfit being so ridiculously colorful compared to the stories that he's in, which are primarily very, very, very dark. There's a scene later in this story where he's standing with you know, like in like the little courtyard with the king guy, and he pops, you know, like as opposed to like everyone else who's like brown and black and gray, he's like this burst of color in the middle of the room. And so I kind of like that aesthetically, personally. So
and it sort of makes his verbal and like physical abuse of Peri more jarring, because he's dressed like a children's imaginary
like
friend.
A clown.
Yeah, like a clown.
Yeah, like a children's imaginary friend. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't mind his outfit. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I don't know. I mean,
I've seen guys at Burning Man dress weirder than that.
Fair. So, but I do have their reasoning behind why he's dressed like that does kind of fall apart later in the story, but we'll get there. So
I forgot about that.
So Perry's not impressed, and then we go back to Edgeworth, and he's taken the twins on the spacecraft, and then we meet on the spacecraft. We meet the owl demons that are in the rest of the story.
Oh, is that? I was calling them gorilla eagles.
Okay,
Gorilla
I called them
eagles?
owl demons because of the feathers.
Yeah, the feathers made me. They look like more like eagle feathers to me. I also call them hawk trolls. I watched this one with my roommate. So he made some really good observations that we'll get into later on.
All right. So the owl demons are there, and Edgeworth is like, hey, go. He takes the twins off into this other room so that they can go do math stuff, I guess.
Sure.
And,
Math someone.
Right. And then he speaks to this guy called Mestor, who is Edgeworth's master. And he's like, do you have the twins? And he's like, yeah. He's like, good.
The
and
twins.
Then he disappears. And the guy, he's like hearing him in his mind. And you're like, all right, whatever. You don't get a good look at the guy because he's like transposed over Edgeworth.
Yeah.
And then we go to back to the console room, and Peri comes in, and she's changed her clothes, and she's like, now this is how you dress. And I'm just like, Peri, you're not wearing an outfit that is any less ugly than what the doctor's wearing.
It was the 80s, Scott.
Oh, it's a hideous outfit.
Oh, but she's adorable.
But on the subject of Peri, why make her American if that's not her natural accent?
Well, one, because they made her American because John Nathan Turner was hoping to, and he tried this a lot. Sure. He would bring in foreign companions to sort of like hopefully win over audiences in another country. He did that with Tegan to win over Australia, and he's done it now. He's doing it with Peri to win over America.
Sure.
But then the reason that it's not just an American actress is because at the time the BBC had rules against hiring non-British actors.
Right. No, man, that all makes total sense.
Yep.
That's the worst American accent I've ever seen in a film or television show.
It's really dreadful. Yeah. It's really dreadful. So the doctor makes fun of Peri's outfit because he's very small now, and he attacks. Did he already attack Peri, or did that happen before?
It happens in part 2, I believe.
No, it happens after this.
After that, okay. So he attacks her at this point.
Well, he tries to strangle her.
Yeah, he tries to strangle her because he thinks that she's a spy or something, and then tries to strangle her, and then snaps out of it, and she's like, you tried to kill me. And he's like, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. And she's like, no, seriously, you totally did. And he was like, oh, well, then I need to isolate myself on Titan 3 and become a hermit. And she's like, I don't – that seems like a weird logic jump. Yeah. But all right.
You're my disciple now.
Meanwhile, Mestor is telling Edgeworth that he has to take he's got to take these twins to Titan 3 as well. To go do stuff on Titan 3. So as you can see, our stories are beginning to converge.
You can see the narratives weave together.
Yeah. The owl demons from Zoobilee Zoo are I guess part of the it seems that like they seem to be part of Mestor's species, but then we'll learn later that they're not.
Yeah, no, that goes right out the window.
Yeah.
You know who they kind of remind me of? They kind of remind me of Dan Harmon's character in Rick and Morty.
Yeah. Yeah.
That eagle guy?
I forget his name. Hawkman.
Hawkman?
Yeah, I forget.
Rick.
I forget what it's...
Well, beloved, that means I am very sad.
So the dad of the twins comes home from work, sees that the twins are gone. He calls up the authorities, and he's like, my twins are missing. And they're like, oh, no, they know how to do math. And he's like, I know, right? And so they're like, okay, we'll look for them. And the authorities find a ship, and they're like, okay, maybe the twins are on this ship. And then they try to talk to the ship, and then the ship warps away. But twist, that kind of ship isn't supposed to have warp engines. Do you know how much that matters to this story? Not even remotely. But they do make sure that they mention it for some reason.
Twice.
Twice, yeah. So Doctor and Peri arrive on Titan 3. Something crashes, and they're like, okay, we should go check that out. And then we meet Mestor, who's like a caterpillar owl. And he's really creepy.
He's amazing. He's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's like if a gremlin tried to eat the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah, because he still has like he's got like feathers on his head, fur all over his body, but then he's also covered in slime, so it's all like matted down. It's disgusting.
And it's clearly an actor wearing like a mask that covers most of his face, but you can just see the movement of his chin.
Yeah. And the owl mask, I mean, it's an owl mask. Like it's not even it's ridiculous. Anyway, it's wonderful. And I love that his name is Mester because he's their master. I just like there's just no thought process going into any of this, and I love it so much. It's like a real free form kind of like if I was told that they thought of this story as it went along, I would not remotely be surprised.
Yeah, it's like a jazz solo of an episode.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's like the
so Doctor and Peri are going to check out the wreckage, and they find Lang, who is part of whatever the authorities were that were looking for the twins earlier, and so they bring him into the TARDIS, and then Lang wakes up ready to kill, and that's how that's how part one ends. He's ready to kill the Doctor,
and the Doctor gives like a bitch, like don't you point that at me.
Yeah,
I'm Colin Baker.
Yeah. But yeah, he thinks the Doctor is the guy who made him crash and probably stole the twins and yada yada. So he's ready to kill him with his hot glue gun.
Yeah.
That
I'm
has
really
been
glad
spray painted black.
Yeah. I'm really glad I watched this episode before seeing Midnight Special.
All right. So yeah, that's part one.
Powers.
It's this very quickly begins an ongoing plot device in Colin Baker's run, in which the Doctor and Peri are completely separated from the rest of the story, and then in like the first half, and then join the story in the second half, and it's really strange.
Yeah.
It's a strange structure that I don't understand. It's like the creator of the show. Who is the showrunner at this point? Or the script editor?
I think it's still Sayward.
Is it still Sayward? All right. Well,
I don't know. I can look it up.
Yeah. So maybe it's still Sayward. So Sayward, he started doing this thing where he was not interested in the Doctor as much, and Sayward like. He didn't like any of the people that played the Doctor under his tenure.
Mm-hmm.
He hated Peter Davison and he hated Colin Baker so much more. And so there was a thought that the reason that he didn't put Colin Baker in his own stories very much was because he just couldn't stand him. So he was more interested in exploring whatever alien world they would be getting into, way more so than whatever the Doctor was doing. So first parts with Colin Baker tend to almost like entirely take place on the TARDIS, which is weird.
Yeah. And then they're bickering.
Super weird.
And
lots of bickering.
No, I felt like really for this person. I'll get into how I felt in the later parts, but at this point in the story, you just feel really like uncomfortably worried about Peri.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just like, this poor girl, like this weird, creepy guy is like berating her and like attacking her and then denying it. And then like talking about how like high he is and making her feel low and like weak.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really uncomfortable. And like, I really don't want to berate. I don't want to criticize for trying something new, because I think it is sort of a really ballsy, interesting thing to do with the Doctor, but like that's what I was feeling at this time. He's kind of like the worst parts of 11.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the worst parts of 11 mixed with a lot of like early 12.
Yeah.
just like really smug, but then also kind of angry and
alienating.
Yeah.
It's like because Matt Smith, the 11 could have an ego and he could be a little bit of like like a diva, but the Matt Smith brought such a vulnerability and like like a lovable Inspector Gadgety thing to it that you laughed at it instead of like like Matt Smith could be like, I actually think I'm very handsome, and Amy Pond can roll her eyes, but it's like fun.
Mm-hmm.
But in here, it's just like, yeah, like you feel like she's like the poor like granddaughter that's like trapped and can't escape from the TARDIS.
Yeah,
and she just wants her like cute boyfriend Peter Davidson back, or not even her cute boyfriend, but like her dad / like English professor,
Well, we'll get into her relationship with Peter Davidson because it's a really bold and interesting choice what they end up doing with Peri and 5. So we'll get there.
2019.
Yeah. But I think that it's interesting seeing what they're trying to accomplish here, because what's really fascinating, and we're not going to get to Ace for a while, but I find it really interesting that with 12 in 2 seasons, basically, Moffat really just took what they were planning to do with 6 and what they were planning to do with Ace, and then combined them into 2 seasons of a show and made it work.
Almost kind of like when you remake an interesting but flawed movie.
Right. Because the plan with Ace, and it's not something that ever actually happens because the show got canceled before they could do it, but the plan was to make her the first human Time Lord. And that's kind of what that's kind of what Moffat did with Clara.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then making the Doctor like somewhat like grumpy and arguably unlikable, and then growing him and making him lovable, is something that's what he did, with 12. So it's interesting that he basically just took those ideas and then improved on them. But, he probably wouldn't have been able to do that as well had he not seen what didn't work here.
Sure.
So,
and
anyway,
the show was a different thing at that point. Like it was an hour long as opposed to 4 20-minute episodes and seasons, right. I feel like the more I hear about the Colin Baker era, it seems like just all of the cards were stacked against them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not kidding. So Cass, tell us about part 2.
Okay. So Gun Guy, I've been calling him Gun Guy in my notes.
I've been calling him Michael Shannon.
He passes out again.
That's how they resolve the cliffhanger, guys.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna shoot you, and then he's
there's
like,
this really awkward wide shot of everyone just like standing there after, like, I will shoot you, Doctor, and then she's like, oh, okay, I won't.
Yeah, so they bicker more, and I hate when the companion and the Doctor bicker. Like, banter is fine, but like, it's just straight up bickering.
And but this one, I feel like the Doctor kind of has a point here, because this guy Lang was going to kill the Doctor, and then he passes out, and Peri's just like, oh, this poor man. And the Doctor's like, poor man, he was going to kill me. And he's like, and she's like, it's not his fault. Just think about all the things that he probably went through. He's not in his right mind. And then meanwhile, I'm just like, Peri, you're literally talking to a guy that did exactly the same thing to you, and you felt nothing. Like you did not feel sorry for him. And the Doctor kind of has a point at this point. Now, there's plenty of bickering later on that is just bickering for the sake of bickering.
Yeah.
But I feel like in this particular instance, I'm kind of on the Doctor's side, because it's like, hey, man,
Yeah.
I think secretly Peri's just like, let's just do this. Let's just scrap this one. This one's broken. Let's just try again.
She picks up the gun. She's like, it'll only hurt for a second. It'll be fine.
Oh my God.
Right? You'll regenerate.
We'll get another one.
Into someone better?
It'll be good. Radagast Brown. He's coming. Let's take care of this. Come on.
I let birds poop on my head. I've been high since 1973.
So the owl demons, or like the metallic feather guys, they are checking out their ship because they got caught in the same ray that brought down all the other ships. So they're in like this bunker on the asteroid, and they're checking out their ship, and they're like, oh, we got to make it better so we can go home. And the brain twins are doing math by hand as punishment. They're like, we need screens. The darn millennials with their screens. They need
My
screens.
hand hurts.
Yeah.
What are we?
And literally, Edgeworth treats them like Ben Stiller and Happy Gilmore, where he's just like,
oh yeah, like the grandma.
You can bother me for a cold glass of shut the hell up.
Yeah.
But to show you the edge of my belt.
Or I will put you to sleep. You're in my world now, Grandma.
They're like writing on these like glass tablets with like dry erase markers and like making the weird square pieces.
I really want them to be named like Hank and Dean.
Unfortunately, they're Romulus and Remus.
I know.
Again, for reasons I don't know.
Because that's what every sci-fi fantasy thing has, like Roman god stuff at some point, like Star Trek, Harry Pop, which is how he wants to be called now. He made an announcement.
So the old guy that kidnapped the brain twins, he kind of like tells them a little bit about the evil space bugs plan. And then the space bugs like, you guys better do your math or I'm going to steal your brain or whatever. I don't know what's happening in the story.
Moons.
And so back in the TARDIS, the Doctor like uses some Star Trek tech and he like patches the guy up.
Sure.
Lance, and then
right?
he's like, yeah,
Lang.
And then he's like, oh, my evil senses are tingling. Something's afoot here. And I think it's really funny because Peri in the previous episode was wearing like heels and now she's in boots. And I'm like, what? When did she have time to change? The Doctor was just doing surgery. So the Doctor like, yeah. The Doctor like opens the viewport in the TARDIS and looks out on the landscape and he's like, what's that? And Peri's like, oh, it's a bump. And he's like, that's not a bump. That's a thing we need to check out. And
that's the plot.
Yeah. Well, and he also during this whole process, like he's putting together facts and jumping to conclusions that are all correct, but his logic jumps to get there are YouTube conspiracy video level.
Oh yeah, like Darth Jar Jar, like
it doesn't
Slender Man.
Yeah.
He said kids. That means that bump has kids in it. And they've been kidnapped and they're holding them hostage. And it's like, wait, what? What? I mean, you're not wrong. Good for you, the lucky guess, but God, what?
Yeah.
How are you jumping to this conclusion? It's insane.
Well, he is the Doctor.
So the brain twins have finished their math punishment, and the old guy's like, okay, I'm going to upload this to wherever. And they're just like, oh, it's so powerful. And he's just like, yeah, I know. Math is awesome. And the Doctor and Peri are out on the surface of the asteroid, and they break into the bunker through like a service thing.
Peri's literally complaining. Like, she's like, I'm tired. And she's 50 feet away from the TARDIS. They've walked 50 feet, and she's like, I'm so tired.
I never know why they have the companions in heels, and they're running around in like a desert. Like,
I know why.
That's not practical.
So forget.
Whatever, the 80s.
Well, okay, question.
Yeah.
I've never worn heels. However, are these boots heels? They have heels, right? Okay. So
they're boots with a heel.
Would it be at all helpful to have a heel that you could dig into a surface when you're climbing up a hill? You know, like a cleat, you know? Like a cleat kind of situation?
Not on the front, it's in the back, so if you dug in, you'd just fall over.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
Because cleats,
I was trying to help.
Because like cleats or mountain boots have like soccer cleats. Those little spikes are all around the shoe.
Right. It's not just one giant one in the back that.
So now that we're talking about companion shoes, now that we're talking about companion shoes, which I've kind of been waiting for this entire time. So, okay, I'm going to see if I remember this right. I feel like Amy wore like cute, like little boots, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Little ankle boots.
Because she needed to show as much of her leg as physically possible.
Right. As was censorably possible.
Yes, on the BBC. My God, just picturing the poor man in charge of like decency at the BBC. It's like, what are these?
I just imagine. I mean, like
pops.
Her skirts were so short that I feel like if they went up even an inch, we would just be seeing her underwear.
They were iconically short.
They were ridiculous.
So I feel like I remember. Did Rose wear boots? Did Rose just wear like boots or like sneakers?
I think she just wore sneakers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I feel like Donna probably wore the most like adult shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think she wore flats a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like slip-on flats.
Yeah. Martha wore boots, I think.
I don't remember.
And I feel like Clara wore just like flats or whatever.
Yeah, Clara was usually dressed up like a child's doll. Let's
not dwell on that.
Style. Missed opportunity not turning her into a doll in an episode at some point because.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine 12 turning into like a Muppet?
That would be fantastic. Also, they leave laying in the TARDIS. Is that a good idea?
They
Probably
sure do.
Not. Oh yeah, he's like, yeah, hide his gun, and she was like, okay, and so she like hides the battery pack or whatever to fire his laser gun in the wardrobe room, which is important later.
Yeah.
So they break into the bunker, and then the doctor's like, oh, maybe this was a terrible idea. Why would you let me do this? And she's like, what? You said we had to go look at stuff. And he's just like, yeah, but I'm crazy right now. So basically, and then the metallic feather dudes show up and surround them. And the doctor like hides behind Peri, like comically, like, no, don't shoot, mercy. Mm-hmm. And the little owl demon dudes, they bring the doctor and Peri to the old guy, who is going into this pod, and it looks like a tractor beam almost, but then he turns all sparkly, and like his circulatory system is the only thing you see, and I'm like, this is uncomfortable.
Well, okay, you should say you're saying that, and it sounds way cooler than what it actually is. Edgeworth goes into this machine, hoses, and then it fades into a painting of a stick figure with a circulatory system.
Yes,
with some like flashy lights in there, and not even a detailed picture of a circulatory system.
Oh no, it's like third grade anatomy. Like this is your heart. Yeah,
right.
I'm talking hip bone connected like to the like shoulder bone.
Right, and it's got some like fiber optics like going on. It's wow, and I don't whatever. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
So yeah, the doctor talks to the old guy, and he's like, "Oh, hey, don't I know you?" And apparently, the old guy's a Time Lord that we've never heard anything about previously up to this point.
I remember him being a Time Lord from the last time that I've seen this, but I don't remember them saying he was a Time Lord until part 4. Or even then they don't say it. It's just assumed because of what happens in part 4. But I don't remember them specifically saying he was a Time Lord. Mm-hmm. The way that they talked, it seemed like he was just some guy that the Fourth Doctor met on some adventure at some point.
Yeah, like he was like, oh, my old pal Lando. Like just someone
No,
from
don't
my
they
past.
actually, doesn't he like, oh yeah, you're a Time Lord, silly. In this one, or is that later?
They do say that he's a Time Lord in this one.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
They do. Okay, I must have missed that. I don't know.
So he's like, yeah, this guy's with us. It's fine.
Because there's that whole deal at the end where...
Yeah.
No, I mean, I know about the end. I said I knew about the end.
Right.
I'm saying I don't remember them specifically stating that he's a Time Lord. All right.
I'm pretty sure that they just say he's a Time Lord straight up.
This is my friend, the Time Lord.
Yeah.
All right.
But so Lang wakes up in the TARDIS and he grabs his gun and he's like, oh, they took my battery. So he like just starts wandering around. And the Doctor and the old guy in the bunker are chatting still, and the metallic feather captain goes into the hall and he's all suspicious and he turns on this blinking light and it looks very ominous. And then we cut back to Lang, who has magically found the wardrobe room, which I don't know how, because the TARDIS is supposed to be like this labyrinth or whatever. So he randomly starts undressing and picks a new outfit.
Sure.
And
becomes a mime.
Yeah, he like picks the most like gaudy 80s thing I've ever seen.
And this is what I'm talking about. So like if the Sixth Doctor is supposed to be an alien and dresses like that because he's an alien and this is what he thinks looks good, what the hell is Lang's excuse? Because
I know.
Guys, let me try to explain what this thing is, because
it looks like tinfoil.
It is a karate gi made of multicolored, like rainbow colored tinfoil.
This is what my Thea used to wear to work back when she worked at Sears in like the early 90s.
It is the most hideous thing, and it's got sleeves that are like poofy enough, like to be like a, I don't know. It's horrible. I mean, it is just for as much crap as people give the Sixth Doctor's outfit, it has nothing on what Lang picks out.
Oh yeah,
and is wearing. It is god awful.
Is this his jacket for the rest of like the time he's on the show?
He's not on the show anymore.
Oh,
yeah. We'll get there in part 4, I guess. I mean, you watched it. You should remember this, but
I guess I guess in my heart I was like, well, he'll show up again. I really like Lane.
It seems like they're setting him up as a companion for sure, but that happens like multiple times throughout these next 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of them like trying out companions and then just being like, maybe not. And only picking a new one when the previous one is ready to leave. So
the older Time Lord is like, hey, so it was nice catching up, but I gotta run. So we're gonna lock you in here, and there's like 100 million combinations to the lock, but you'll figure it out. It's fine. So they teleport out, and they leave Peri and the Doctor locked in the bunker. And Peri like is wandering around, and she's like, hey, Doctor, I don't like the look of this blinking light. And he's just like, well, I don't either. It's a self-destruct button. We're gonna figure our way out of here. So he rigs the sparkle pod somehow into a time machine teleport thing. Sends Peri back to the TARDIS like 10 seconds ago. And then he's like, oh, I need your watch because I need to figure out the time differential and blah, 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 blah. So she gives him his watch or her watch before she leaves. And then he sends her into the TARDIS. But then he's like, oh, the watch stopped. Darn Earth girl.
You stupid lady.
Yeah, so she shows up in the TARDIS, and Lang's just like pointing a gun to her head, but she's like, I don't have time for this. Get out of my way. So she opens the viewport just in time to see the bunker blow up, and she's like, oh, Doctor. And it's like the most fake crying I've ever seen. And then that's where it ends.
So the Twin Dilemma has so many really beautiful reaction shots. And we'll talk about my favorite one in a little bit, but this is definitely one of them. Like we had in part 1, we had the Doctor's like, are you pointing a gun at me? And then this one has like it was like something out of Spoils of Babylon.
Yeah, I want to talk because like the Doctor talks about how this teleportation thing it works, or how he thinks it's going to work. And it's the most it's a teleportation nightmare. Like, it just sounds, because he literally describes it as, so this thing is going to destroy you, and then it's going to reconstruct you somewhere else in time and space. Yeah. And it's like, it's my nightmare scenario with teleportation stuff. And because, like, just the idea of every time you teleport, you are actually dying is horrifying to me. And that's kind of the way he describes it, and it's awful. And then when she teleports, he's like, "Oh, it worked." he didn't even know if it was going to work. Oh man, that's rough. And then I also got to talk about the twins, the brain twins. Their golden bed closet.
Oh yeah,
which is something. I wish I had a bed closet when I was I actually had an apartment when I first moved out, and it had a laundry room, but we didn't have like a washer and dryer, so it was just this empty room, and we filled the floor up with futon mattresses that we had, and so that was like our guest room.
Nice.
And so it was basically this golden bed closet, because there's no beds. It's just you walk into mattresses and pillows.
I thought you were gonna say you all just like slept on that floor together.
No, that was our guest room. All
right, time to go to sleep.
Yeah,
like box trolls.
Cuddle me for warmth. We can't afford the heat. We're 18.
Come stop your crying, it'll be all right.
So tell us about part 3, Nick.
So the doctor's dead, and Peri pretends to be sad about it. So we kind of get like the last few, the seconds, and then you find out that the doctor was actually survived because he used Peri's watch to synchronize the burr, and the watch was burr. And and the Peri was like, "Oh my god, I thought you were dead." And the doctor's like, "Oh, I thought you'd be happy." And she's like, God damn it. Oh, no, I just want to. And so, but meanwhile, back on Jaconda, Dom DeLuise as Jabba the Hutt is. So there's this great scene where this other bird guy was caught stealing vegetables, and so the gorilla bird, the Tango Warriors from the Power Rangers movie, are like, "Hey, Mester, this guy stole some vegetables," and so he's like, "Oh, stealing vegetables, eh?" And he's like, "Please," and he's like, "I'm not gonna kill you. I'm gonna do something way worse, and I'm gonna use emulation." And the Jacondian, the Birdman, is like, "No, not emulation." And he goes, "Yeah, emulation on your ass." And then this poor actor like shakes while on his knees and like, whoa! And then like a green light is like imposed over the actor and going like, woo, and then he falls.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he said embolism.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Embolism.
Yeah. Death by embolism.
Yes. So this scene is very important to me because if you look and see the guards that bring in the thief, they all look like, like pretty much like, the same. But there's one, I guess they must have made his costume last, but it is like noticeably crappier than the others. Like the feathers are like yellow and red instead of all the other ones are black and like blue. And it's like super patchy, and his mask is covering the least amount of his face. And I just feel really bad for that guy because I'm sure he was like the last one cast, or like he was just like, oh God, this is all the material we have left. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, feathers are expensive.
Yeah, we got to get the shot today.
We can't buy another pillow.
I kept watching this episode, guessing who among this cast had BFAs in drama.
Oh no.
I was Judi Dench's scene partner when we did Agamemnon. All right, put the beetle head on me.
I love that that Mestor or whatever. He sounds like a Morton Joe.
Yeah,
Like when he talks, so I'm just like, oh man.
My one of the things my roommate said was like, I wonder if like if Trump is elected while he's swearing in the office, he'll just become that like like Men in Black style, just like they're my true form. So the TARDIS comes into Jaconda, and but it's instead of like the doctor's like, oh finally we're on Titan E, it's like this horrible like desolate wasteland.
No, they're on Jaconda now. They were on Titan 3.
Oh, they were on Titan 3, but now they're in Jaconda, and so the doctor's like, I don't want to be here. But then let's see, I guess
we didn't mention the fact that the old guy, Edgeworth, his Time Lord name was Azmael,
right?
Azmael, and he was last the doctor knew he was the master of Jaconda. And so when he ran away, the doctor's like, oh, of course he went back to Jaconda because he's master of that planet.
Yeah.
So now they're on Jaconda, so that's why they're there.
And then there's all these like gastropods, and so they're like exploring, and then they see like these weird murals that are like depicting like these ancient slugs that I guess like are what Mazer is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then Lang gets like stuck on some slime, like you do.
Right.
And then Azamel takes the just David, the creepy little boys, to he's like, hey, look at these eggs. Look at them. Do math on these eggs. And Mezer arrives in all of his physical glory. And oh man. Sorry. Mester's so great. He's everything I love about Doctor Who. He's just weird and colorful and stupid. So he starts like messing with Azamel's brain, and he's like, "Stop! I don't like it anymore." He's like, "Fine, dick, but you better get those things to math, or I'm gonna embolize everything you love." And so the twins are like, "What is that? And why are you talking to it?" And Ismael's, you don't understand. Like, Mester usurped me as the leader of Jaconda, and so he pulls out. And okay, this is great. So he shows you a chart of like this is the sun, and it's like a sun. This is Jaconda, and it's like the first planet to the sun. These are two other planets, like past Jaconda. So our plan. God is my witness. Their plan is to draw the planets into Jaconda's gravitational pull and essentially turn those two planets into Jaconda's moons.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And if you're wondering what those other two planets are, Asmel literally says they are of no importance. He doesn't say if they have a population or if there's like people there, but he just says it's not important. So the doctor leaves Peri and like 70s Robin Williams behind, and finds he's in this weird like outfit. When he takes his jacket off, he's just like a mime. He has like suspenders.
Wait, I think you're in part 4. I don't think you're in part 3 anymore.
Oh, is he not taking his jacket off?
No.
Okay, so he still has his jacket on, and so so they go into Azamel's lab, and they the doctor like has another like abusive boyfriend moment, and like starts attacking Azamel.
Yeah.
But then a bird gorilla and the twins like manage to pry them off of each other, and the doctor's like, "Oh, what? I remember Gallifrey. What is that? Something?" And Azamel's like, "Oh, you're so vulnerable." And meanwhile, Peri Platypus is captured by some more gorilla birds and brought to Slugworth, and Lang escapes the lab and is like, we're screwed, they're gonna kill Peri. And the doctor, for once in his miserable 3-part life, is worried that Peri might die.
And it's the most awkward exclamation because they do it in close-up so that he kind of looks just like barely off camera and just shouts, Peri! But Peri isn't in the room. So if you look at the wide shot, it's 2 owl demons holding back the doctor, and Asmael is like standing in front of him with like another owl demon, and they're just like, oh yeah, no, they took Peri to Mestor, and she's gonna talk to him, and he's not gonna like that because he doesn't like things, so she's probably gonna die. And then just imagine out of the close-up, just remaining in that shot, the doctor just looks to the side and then shouts, Peri!
So, this is so much more entertaining than Castrovalva was.
Yeah.
I'm having so... And we'll talk about it, but I had kind of a fun, emotional revelation with this whole episode, but I remembered it, but we're not going to talk about it yet.
All right. So part 4 begins with Peri showing up in front of Mestor, and Mestor and like his Jafar, his owl demon Jafar, is like, aren't you going to kill her? And he was like, no, I find her pleasing. She will dance for me.
It was Peri, to be fair.
Yeah. I will have her dance for me. It'll be wonderful. And then Owl Demon Jafar is like, what? You can't. You killed that other guy for stealing vegetables. She could be doing anything. She's like a spy and blah blah blah. And so he was just like, he's just like, don't worry about it. It's fine. I like this Peri woman. Let's keep her around. And then Mestor goes to, he's like, I'm going to go check out the lab. You stay here, Peri person that I find pleasing. And then he goes down to the lab and he's like, so, Asmael, how are things going? And he's like, oh, good. Many maths, much good. Excellent. And he's like, good, because, whatever you need to do to make sure that the twins understand that this is for the greater good, just come up with whatever lies you want. And he's like, yeah, I got it taken care of. Good. And so then he leaves. And obviously some threats were in there too, because the guy just can't stop from threatening people. So he leaves, and then the doctor goes with Mestor, and is brought in front of him, and the doctor is basically like, I know you got those twins or whatever, but if you really want to have 2 new moons in your gravitational pull, I'm the guy that you go to. Like, if anyone knows maths, it's this guy right here. I'm like the math king. Al Demon Jafar is like, you can't trust him. And he barely gets out him, and he's already being embolismed. And then he dies. And he's just like, don't tell me what to do. And so he dies. And then Asmael, meanwhile, goes to the twins and removes their amnesia wrist circles. And so the twins get their memories back. And now they're like ready to help him because they're not so confused anymore. And they kind of know what's going on. So they're ready to go.
More ways than one.
Yeah. Lang's in his suspenders outfit now. He's taken off his gi, his foil gi, and he's in his suspenders. And for those across the pond, those are braces. He's wearing his braces. Casual Lang is best Lang. And he's wearing a really tight shirt to show off his absolutely no muscle build whatsoever.
Honestly, he's kind of built like a wire walker, to be honest.
Yes, totally. So then the doctor comes in the lab and he's like, all right, so explain to me how this whole thing is going to work. Because how are you going to get 2 other planets to join this planet? Like, what? That you can't do that. And he's like, oh, well, actually, what we're going to do is they're going to occupy the same space, but each one is going to be a day apart. So we're going to be using time and space to do it. And he's like, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. So there's like, okay, great. So that's how we're going to do it. And we're gonna time displace them by 1 day each, so that they can join Gioconda in orbit, and nothing bad will happen. Except that the doctor's like, well, I don't think that math checks out, and I'm pretty sure all 3 things are going to be sucked into the sun, and the sun's going to blow up. And Asmiel just hits his forehead. He's just like, oh my God, you're right. Because this is a thing that he's apparently never thought of until the doctor just says it with no backup information whatsoever.
Just based off of being alive and knowing how stuff works.
Right. So then he's like, well, we need to figure out, like, why would they want this? Why would they want these things to get, why would they want Gioconda and these other 2 planets to be sucked into the sun and explode the sun? What could they possibly get out of that? And then the doctor's like, well, what's in here? And he's like, oh, that's the egg nursery. And he's like, okay, let me check it out. So he goes in the egg nursery and he's looking around, and he's like, is this all of the eggs that you guys have? And he's like, no. And he opens up like a porthole window, and there's like a whole warehouse of eggs.
To which I say,
yeah. To which I say, why is there a smaller egg room that's connected to a warehouse egg room? Like, why don't you just have the warehouse egg room?
Well, you don't want to go.
What's the purpose of the smaller mini egg room?
Well, yeah. Well, you have a wine cellar, but then you have a basement where you keep barrels.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You don't have to go all the way down to the basement every time you just want to.
So the doctor is like, all right, I'm going to check out one of these pill eggs, because they're just giant white pill eggs. And he's like, we got to figure this out, because there's something going on with these eggs. So he takes one of the eggs. And he's like, these eggs are supposed to be covered in slime and nutrients, because how is the thing eating otherwise? And so he's like, let's check out what's in these eggs. So he takes a laser and he fires the laser across the egg. It does nothing. And at first, while I'm watching it, I was just thinking, wow, the special effects are really bad. They didn't even bother like trying to make it look like the egg was breaking. And he's like, it didn't do anything. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good.
Yay, BBC.
Yeah. So it doesn't do anything. And he's like, that was, I mean, the heat concentration was so high, there's no way that it couldn't break through the egg. And he's like, unless these eggs are designed to withstand the heat of a sun explosion, which means their plan, the Mestor's plan, is to bring these 3 planets together, suck them into the sun will explode, and because the eggs can survive a sun explosion, the eggs will be scattered across the universe, which will allow them to hatch all over the universe, and then the caterpillar owl monsters will conquer the universe. That's their plan.
That's kind of what like Jor-El's plan was.
I mean, no, it's not. That's basically the plan. Is basically they could have called.
What if a gorilla bird could be something greater, Scott?
It's not, but it's not the gorilla birds.
What are the gastropods?
No. The gastropods are Mestor.
The slug dudes.
Oh, okay.
Mestor species. Yeah. The slug things that were on the rock walls.
So the Giocondans pray to the gastropods. They treat them as like their lords.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So the idea is basically that because for some reason these slug guys can just conquer any planet they're on regardless. With little to no effort whatsoever, because this thing shows up, Nestor shows up, and it's just like, hey, I know you're like king of Gioconda or whatever, Aziel, but I'm taking over. And Asmiel's just like, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, he can embobulate people, Scott.
Right. So he takes over. So the thought is that since the gastropods can conquer any planet very easily. By spreading them across the universe, they will conquer the universe. So that's the plan. It's like a dandelion, dandelion plan.
Project
basically.
Dandelion.
Mhm.
Yeah, Project Dandelion. That's what this episode should have been called. Because let's be honest, there is no dilemma involving these twins.
They're in a hell of a dilemma, but it has nothing to do with the Doctor.
Right. So
This old man is making them do math forever.
You're right. So, but they like math. They would rather
They love
do math than play TP chess. So.
They love maths as much as they hate their mom.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about how much they hate their mom.
She's a foolish woman.
Yeah, they hate her. They hate their mom. They just think she's the worst. They're definitely Team Dad for sure.
With Daddy's boys.
Yeah. So at this point, they come out of the egg room and then they find the owl demon that made friends with Asmiel. Like Asmiel is just like, hey, be my friend. And he's like, yeah, cool. You seem like an all right guy. So they're friends, and then they come out, and then the friendly owl demon is dead because Mestor, who can psychically link with people, was psychically linked with him this entire time and using him to spy on them in the lab. And so now he knows that they know what's going on. And Lang, Peri, and the twins all head for the TARDIS to get out of here, but they're attacked by owl demons. Mestor meets with Asmael and the Doctor, and the Doctor throws acid at Mestor, but Mestor has like a force field up, and so it's like some sort of psychic force field. And he's just like, the Doctor's like, well, whatever. What am I supposed to be afraid of? You? Come on. And he's like, well, I'm going to possess you. And he's like, you can't possess a Time Lord. And he's like, want to bet? And he possesses Asmael. And then Asmael breaks through the possession. He's like, you have to destroy Mestor's body so he has nowhere to go. So he's like, all right. So then he just pulls out his backup acid and throws that at the body, and it melts. So Mestor's body is destroyed. Melted by acid. And then Asmael is just like, well, Mestor is like, through Asmael is like, now what are you going to do? Now I don't have another body to go into, so now I'm just going to be in you forever. And Asmael is like, yes, but I'm going to do the one thing that you can't stop me from doing. I'm going to regenerate. And so he regenerates to die, which isn't what I understand how regeneration works. So I'm pretty sure there was no regeneration involved. I think Mestor just died. I think he just forced himself to die, which is
because the Doctor says something about, no, but you're out of your allotted regenerations. And Asimov's like, that doesn't mean, that's a stupid rule that we made up.
Well, no, he says, I know. And
yes.
He's like, I know, and I'm not going to regenerate. But you just said you did. Yeah. Instead, I'm just going to die.
Well, look, there's this thing you can do. Look, there's this thing.
It's weird though. Like, why call it regeneration if that's not what you're doing?
Maybe that's just what they call dying.
You're like regenerating into death.
Yeah. The last regeneration.
That's the most emo
Scott,
thing.
that old last regeneration in the sky.
So weird. So he dies and exercises Mestor from his body, like in a squiggly line that I imagine they wish that they had Supernatural's budget, because that's what they wanted it to look like. But instead it's just a squiggly line that comes out his mouth.
Godspeed, Mestor.
Yeah. So Mestor joins the big gastropod in the sky, and
I wish you were here.
Yeah, and then Asmael dies, and Lang decides that he's going to stay on Jakanda because he thinks he can help out. So Asmael gave the Doctor his King of Jakanda ring, and the Doctor gives the ring to Lang because he's like, well, if you're staying here, you should have this. So now Lang is master of Jakanda.
Yeah.
And
Lang of Jakanda.
Yeah, and then the twins and the Doctor and Peri all get in the TARDIS, and he doesn't say goodbye to Lang, and Peri's like upset because he's like, we just had that adventure, Doctor. You could at least say goodbye. And he's just like, the thing you have to understand about me is I'm an alien, and I have different customs than you, and you're just gonna have to get used to it because I'm the Doctor now, whether you like it or not. And then it ends. Yeah. And that's the end of the episode. So, that's the twin dilemma.
Yeah.
So what emotional revelation did you come to, Nick?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this episode was so much fun, and I had no idea what was going to happen. And it kind of brought me back to the old days of, watching the new show on the Sci-Fi Channel and never knowing what the new episode was going to be about at all, because I didn't, read about it online. I wasn't looking at behind the scenes photos. I wasn't checking, I wasn't reading UK sites. I would just sit down and turn on the TV and say, like, okay, what have you got for me this time? And that's kind of how I first fell in love with the show, because I would, watch this adventure show having no idea what was going to happen. And I kind of got the same excitement watching this, when you first see Mezor, you're like, oh my God, are we doing this? And, by the end of part 4, I actually warmed to Colin Baker's Doctor immensely. I think that when the facade is broken and you see how vulnerable the Sixth Doctor really can be, I think Colin Baker sells that in such a way that it kind of, by the end, when he's still like a jerk, I was kind of getting like a Jeff Winger like jerk, I was like, I'm going to go on record saying right now, I'm actually like a big fan of what Colin Baker's doing already with this role.
I think you're just going to become a bigger fan as it goes along, because he just gets better and better.
I'm excited.
Especially once we get through his TV stuff. Mm-hmm. His audio adventures are so good. So good. So I'm really pumped for you to see that. And he has phenomenal companions in the audio adventures. It's awesome.
I think he'd have to be, Yeah. Like, you can't just give him like a Rose Tyler, or like it's a Sarah Jane.
Yeah. I'm excited. His first companion in the audio adventures is named Evelyn, and she's like a 60-year-old woman.
Nice.
And it's pretty phenomenal.
How long does Perimadelum or Perimumbleum Peri stay?
Halfway through season 23, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you got her for a while.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, lots of American accents and lots of cleavage.
Yes,
seems to be a thing that, for John Nathan Turner, I'm about to say this, and I feel like, am I right about this? But I'm pretty sure I'm right. That for the fact that John Nathan Turner was gay, he really wanted her in. He really wanted her in some cleavage showing stuff. I guess he was just like, I guess this is what straight guys like. I don't know, but it was
straight guys like boobs.
It's really weird because Peri's cleavage is out a lot on this show. It's really disconcerting for Doctor Who, which is primarily a not particularly sexualized show. It's really it's weird.
It's sexy for people who don't really usually watch stuff for it being sexy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, his face is so weird.
Right. So little strange. But so that's the twin dilemma. What are your thoughts rewatching, Cass? Did you find any more of an appreciation for this story at all?
Absolutely not. I don't like this story. I'm not a big fan of the whole space bug thing that 80s Doctor Who, especially in Colin Baker, does. Because it seems like everyone.
Well, I mean, Vengeance on Varos is a completely different story.
Yes.
That is the most miserable thing I've ever watched.
But everyone's like, oh, it's one of the best ones. And I'm like, no, it's terrible.
So in the world of Star Trek and like the Twilight Zone, which are kind of, I think, the easiest or the kind of closest comparisons to Doctor Who, like when people say, oh, it's, this is the best Star Trek episode, this is the best Twilight Zone episode, it's normally the ones that have like, that are saying the most, and aren't just like about thrills and chills. But one of the interesting things about Doctor Who is the episodes that, like it's a very light show. It seems to be much more about like pulpy adventure than like asking deeper questions about society for the most part. So like what is a great episode of Doctor Who or a classic episode of Doctor Who to you guys?
I don't know how to really put into words how that works, but I mean to me, like of the ones that we've watched in this this reset, I mean, the pilot aside, because that's its own thing. But I would say that Spearhead from Space is probably the like best episode that we've watched so far. As far as, one that I would call like, this is a great episode of Doctor Who, would be Spearhead from Space. I don't know how, I don't really know how to put into words why that one's better than this one. But it just feels better to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to describe it. I mean, the stark difference between this and Caves of Androzani, which is like the best, is it's a steep fall in quality for sure.
Yeah,
it's a steep fall. I don't know,
because they definitely like. I mean, Doctor Who doesn't need a big budget to be a good story, but it certainly doesn't hurt it.
Right.
And like Caves of Androzani, you can tell like the production, like you haven't seen it, Nick, but like the production value and like everything, like even down to like the extras and stuff, like you could tell that people were like giving more than just like phoning it in. But for Twin Dilemma, it's just like, oh, these guys showed up and got paid and did their lines, and that was pretty much it. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say that this is the worst episode of Doctor Who ever, because Armageddon Factor is a thing that exists, and also Underworld. But this is definitely in like the bottom 10 for me still. I really like Colin Baker, but I'm not a fan of how violent he gets in this. Like, I know they're like kind of getting edgy in the whole post-regenerative thing. And I know that Caves of Androzani like tore the Doctor apart in more ways than one, so it's going to be rough, but I think they like I don't like what especially Sayward, like I don't like the way that he interprets the show, because it gets like hyper violent for Doctor Who in this era. So I'm not super into that. And I don't like melty space bugs. They're gross.
All right. Fair enough. As much as you liked this one, Nick, I'll be really curious to see what you think of Time in the Rani.
Oh my God.
Me too.
You haven't even met the Rani yet, ever, as a character.
No, I've heard you guys talk about her a lot.
Yeah, so you're going to meet her in the next episode, and it's an adventure.
She's cooler in concept than execution, and we'll talk about it next week. But
also, learn to love rock quarries.
Oh yeah,
because that's all next week is. Takes place entirely in a rock quarry.
Well, I'm glad to see some things never change.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I guess that wraps up the Twin Dilemma. Not as bad as I remember it being for me. But yeah, next week though, Time in the Rani.